Now, the general weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm David Kramer with Alaska Weather. Thanks for watching for our public segment today. Taking a look, we have a chart here showing the likelihood in a 12-hour period of having precipitation greater than ½ of an inch for areas around south central Alaska. We start here in these 12-hour blocks Friday morning, Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, so on. You can see with these percentage values that some of the highest likelihoods are going to be in Anchorage, 40% chance Friday afternoon to see over ½ of an inch of rain. Talkeetna up to 55%, but the bulk of the time where we're going to see the highest likelihoods to have some of that heavier rain reaching up to ½ an inch is going to be Friday afternoon through Saturday morning. I do want to point out, though, that even though some of these time frames have a 0% chance, that doesn't mean there won't be lighter precipitation. There's just nothing to indicate that there will be precipitation heavy enough to have up to ½ of an inch or more. Taking a look now at our watches, warnings, and advisories for the state. Only advisory that we have out is up in northern portions of the Panhandle here along the Chilkat River. We have a flood advisory that's going to be out until very early on Thursday morning. We are seeing some minor flooding along the river. The crest for the river is going to be around 4 p.m. this afternoon on Wednesday, and then will continue to slowly diminish through Thursday morning, and then where we have the flood advisory ending. Looking at our fire danger map here for Thursday, highest areas are going to be in the interior, especially as we get closer towards the Yukon Flats area where there is still some extreme danger for the spruce. And that we do expect that to start to diminish as we get later into the week. On Friday, as we have rain spreading throughout the state, going to start to bring back some moisture to the areas in the interior as well as the rest of mainland Alaska. Taking a look now at our satellite imagery, we'll start off in the south central area and down through the Panhandle where we have a couple areas of cloud cover, and we can see some of the areas where we would expect rain throughout south central and down into the Panhandle as well. Then we'll move our focus out by the Bering Sea where we have a low out over the Bering, bringing some rain throughout areas of the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands. The frontal system associated with this low as it pushes off to the east is going to be what's bringing in a lot of our moisture later in the week here. But for right now, we are seeing widespread rain throughout the Bering Sea, Aleutian Islands, into the Alaska Peninsula. Southern portions of the mainland, we are seeing some rain as well as we saw on the satellite imagery. And we're expecting thunderstorms in southwest Alaska as well as up through much of the interior and along the Brooks Range. Down in the Panhandle, we would have some high pressure there, starting to diminish some of the values for the precipitation, but there is still rain throughout much of the Panhandle for the remainder of the day. Moving into tonight, clearing up some of that area underneath the high pressure, but still some rain as we get closer towards the coastal mountains. Up in mainland Alaska, still seeing quite a bit of rain through the state, starting to see more pushing in, a little bit more consistent rainfall along the west coast, and some lingering potential for thunderstorms in southwest Alaska up through the interior and Brooks Range for the evening hours. As we look out over the Bering Sea, we can see our frontal system pushing more to the east, bringing more rain to areas of the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands. And as we move into Friday, that rain has made it into the state. We're starting to see that westerly flow, pushing in a lot of moisture to mainland Alaska. On Thursday, probably see some of the heavier rainfall along the west coast of the state, and still some rain throughout the Aleutian Islands area. Up in the interior, we're going to see the potential for thunderstorms still in the afternoon and evening hours, extending up into the Brooks Range as well. And then some rain pushing in to south central Alaska from the west, from the slow moving by Kodiak Island. Going to see the majority of the rain on Thursday by the Kenai Peninsula and Kodiak Island. And then some drier areas out in the eastern portions of the Gulf, extending into the southern portions of the Panhandle. On Friday, with this low pushing farther into the Gulf, continuing to see westerly flow through the Gulf waters as well, bringing in rain throughout the Panhandle. Widespread rainfall through mainland Alaska with some of that westerly flow pushing into the state, spreading that rain throughout the interior as well. And then out over the Bering Sea and Aleutians, we are going to see low pressure coming back to the Aleutians, bringing more rain to the area, even though there's some weak ridging following our other system, bringing some areas of drier conditions to the southeastern portions of the Bering Sea. Taking a look now at our temperatures, starting in south central. Thursday morning low is going to drop down into the 50s for south central, and then dropping down into the 50s for the Panhandle as well. Moving into Thursday afternoon, getting back up to 60 degrees, mid 60s for the southern areas as well as up by Haines. And then for south central Alaska, getting up into the 60s for the most part as well. Warmer there in Glen Allen, getting up to 79 degrees Thursday afternoon. Friday morning lows dropping back down into the 50s for south central Alaska as well as down in the Panhandle. For Friday afternoon highs, getting back up to near 60 degrees, mid 60s for the south and northern locations of the Panhandle. And then for south central Alaska, getting up into the 60s for most locations, a little bit cooler here along the Gulf waters into the 50s there. For northern portions of the state, Thursday morning lows going to drop down to the 40s along the west coast. As we get farther inland, going to be in the 50s. And then for the interior into the 60s for most locations, dropping down into the 60s for most locations in the interior. Up along the Arctic coastline, dropping down to 38 degrees for Utqiagvik and near 50 degrees as we get farther to the east. Thursday afternoon highs going to jump up to near 90 degrees for Yukon Flats, warmest in the state for tomorrow, and to the 80s for much of the central interior and 70s as we get farther to the west. Up along the coastline, getting into the 60s for the most part. Pocket of colder air up there by the Utqiagvik area, only getting up into the 40s. Then down the west coast of the state, getting colder as we get closer towards the water, only getting up to the 50s right along the coast. Friday morning lows dropping down into the 40s for much of western portions of the state, into the 30s up by Utqiagvik, and into the 40s for the rest of the North Slope. Into the interior, dropping down into the 50s and staying a little bit warmer way out east, only getting down into the 60s. Friday afternoon highs, going to see this be a little bit cooler than what we saw on Thursday, as we do have that rain spreading across the state. So we're going to see 60s for those highs in the interior, 70s out by the Yukon Flats area, in the upper 40s to near 50 for much of the North Slope, still colder by Utqiagvik, and then down the west coast, getting up into the 40s to near 50. For our Aleutian Islands areas, we are expecting temperatures to drop down into the 40s for Thursday morning, dropping down into the 50s for southwest Alaska, a little bit cooler out by the water. Thursday afternoon highs getting up to near 60 for much of southwest, as well as down by the Panhandle area, or the Alaska Peninsula rather, and then getting up into the 50s for the Aleutian Islands. Friday morning lows dropping back down into the 40s. And then for the southwestern portion of the state, near 50 degrees, a little bit cooler again as we get out by Nunavik Island area. And Friday afternoon highs getting up into the 50s for the YK Delta, near 60 degrees for the Bristol Bay area. For the Alaska Peninsula, getting up into the 50s and the lower 50s for much of the Aleutian Islands area. Adak going to be a little bit cooler there, or a little bit warmer rather, at 57 degrees. With Alaska weather, I'm David Kramer. Thanks for watching.